Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be filming a little books to read in autumn or October. I'm a little late on this. It's currently October 2nd, but it's what it is, so better late than never, right? But I don't have a super particular order. I tried to do it sort of by genre, but some I weren't completely sure about where they could fit, because it could maybe fit in multiple, or I just wasn't sure. So kind of in order to these, kind of not. I think let's just get started. Some of these are on my TBR for like October, some aren't. I'm trying to do some readathons in order to like really pick up my reading pace again. So I've already read. So let's just get started. I think I'll start with the mangas and graphic novels. Let's start with, first I have Tokyo Ghoul, and I just picked the first one. I have read the whole series. Definitely kind of a spooky book, you know, ghouls in Tokyo. Definitely a little bit graphic. So pay attention to that, but I think it's a good book for spooky season. So yeah, there is Tokyo Ghoul. Next I have Venus in the Blind Spot by Junji Ito. This one is actually my favorite that I've read by him, although I've only read two. I've read Frankenstein and this. So there is Venus in the Blind Spot, and then there's a couple other short stories. So like, look at that. Or this one. Love that. But yeah, Venus in the Blind Spot was good. I don't really remember the other stories. I do remember liking Venus in the Blind Spot though, so I do recommend just any Junji Ito really, for, you know, spooky season. So there are his books, and I haven't included like every single book that I have, or else this video would be long. It's already gonna be long. So just want to preface that, because like I said, I read Frankenstein and that was pretty good, but I definitely liked Venus in the Blind Spot better. Next up we have Death Note. I technically haven't, I think I've read the first book actually, maybe first and second, but I definitely watched the anime. Definitely, you know, just sort of real life spookiness, kind of real life. Definitely a good book, good manga for if you're trying to be frightened a little bit. I thought it was really good. I loved the anime. Another manga, the last one on the list, is Another. Now I haven't technically read this, I haven't watched the anime either, but I know it's supposed to be kind of creepy horror book, so I am intrigued to read it. So that is Another. Okay, next up, one of my favorite graphic novels, and I don't pick up many graphic novels, but this is Fangs by Sarah Anderson. I am rereading this month, so I love this book. It's so quick, so easy to read, so just cute. It's about a vampire and a werewolf that fall in love, and yeah, it just kind of follows their relationship a little bit. It's really quick to read. But I love all the little like references to being a vampire or a werewolf, and sort of how their love is together, considering they're like, aren't they like technically enemies in like folklore and tales and stuff like that? So I thought it was really cute. I can't wait to reread it this season. Next up technically isn't a graphic novel as I was looking through it, but it does have some like illustrations around each. Oh, okay, there is a little drawing in there, so maybe a little bit, but this is Pan's Labyrinth, the Labyrinth of the Faun. I watched the movie, I think it was last year. Now I can't remember. I think last year. And I wasn't sure what to think of it at first, but as I've like kind of thought about it back, as you know, from watching it, I really enjoyed it. and thought it was creepy, kind of cool. So yeah, I got the book. I haven't read it yet, but I think it would be pretty quick and interesting and good, just like autumnal vibes. Next and last sort of graphic novel manga is Through the Woods. These are stories by Emily Carroll. Trying to think how many stories are in here. 7 stories, or I think they're all different stories. But it was good. It was also a quick little read, and loved the illustrations. So definitely kind of spooky, like autumn, even winter a little bit, considering she's like running in the snow. So yeah, thought that was a good book to add to the list. And I really enjoyed it. Okay, next up I have just sort of like classics, or maybe sort of retellings. Like I think one of them is a retelling that I am going to talk about next. First one is sort of the retelling of Sleepy Hollow, and that is Horseman by Christina Henry. This is sort of the tale of Sleepy Hollow. So essentially it's sort of figuring out if the horseman is real. They end up finding a body, and that sort of creates a spiral of events to, do they believe this horseman? Is there something sinister in the woods? So this is on my list to read as a retelling, and it's a pretty quick little book, so I'm excited to get to it. I think it'll be fast, and love that cover. Definitely a good one for October. Next up, I have Carmilla. This is by Joseph Sheridan Le Fon. Hopefully I said that right. This I haven't read yet as well, and I'm ashamed to say that, to be honest, but it's not on my list technically, but I am intrigued to get to it this season. I know it's like sort of the first vampire story, as this says, Carmilla kicks Dracula's ass. So yeah, I know this is also illustrated, so you could also include this in the sort of graphic novel area, but I don't know if other versions have that, so I know this version does. Also love that cover as well. Can you focus? Can you? There we go. Very nice. So yeah, I think on BookTube and all that, people kind of know about this one, but I wanted to include it because vampires. Next up, I have Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Technically have not read this as well. I sort of know the premise around it, like who doesn't, but I also know the sort of underlying themes that Mary Shelley was trying to talk about, so I'm not in a rush to get to this. Plus that I am a little intimidated, but eventually. But yeah, this is Frankenstein. This is the Penguin cloth bound edition, so I think I would get like a paperback that I could read from easier. This is just a very nice edition. Next, I have the well-known Dracula by Bram Stoker. I think we all know this. This is the Penguin Deluxe edition, I think, which has the deckled edges. Very cool sort of illustrations. But yeah, I don't think I need to say much more about this. It's Dracula. Again, vampires. Next, I have the Gormenghast trilogy. This is the entire trilogy. I technically haven't read this either. I've just watched like videos of people who have read it, and know it's supposed to be kind of like haunting, sort of castle vibes, So I think it would be a good book to read in the autumn. It's definitely a big book. Obviously, like I said, this is the trilogy, so it's got all 3 books in it. So you could just start with the first one, which I think is just Gormenghast? No, Titus Groan. Titus Groan is the first one, Gormenghast is the second, and Titus Alone is the third. So that is the trilogy. You could just start with the first book and see how you like it. I did just want to get the trilogy because I liked this vintage edition. Plus, I think it would just help me continue through. So yeah, that is Gormenghast. I know, like I said, it's supposed to be spooky, autumn, castle vibes. Definitely kind of haunting aloneness, I think, as well, from what I've heard. So yeah, that is this book. Lastly on this list is Rosemary's Baby. Now I think this is also a pretty big, spooky, autumnal book to read. So yeah, I think we all kind of know this one. There's a movie as well, you could just watch that if you want. Should be interesting. It says, in this new 15th anniversary edition of the classic masterpiece of spellbinding suspense, evil wears the most innocent face of all. Is her baby evil? Honestly, I haven't seen the movie, so I think this would be a good one to add to your spooky TBR. Yeah, otherwise I don't know too much about it. So that's all the classics that I have. There's probably some modern classics, but those will be in a different section. Okay, next up are the only 2 romance. There's probably some like romance in some of the other books I have, like as an underlying plot, but these are full true romance books. So first up, I have Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. This was just in my book haul video that I uploaded. But this is about a PhD candidate named Phoebe who's been obsessed with true crime. Anyways, this is Love in the Time of Serial Killers. It's about Phoebe who is obsessed with true crime. She's even doing her dissertation on it, analyzing the genre. Then she meets Sam, who she thinks is a serial killer. But they end up falling in love. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm more intrigued to get to this than like some of the other romance novels I have. So that is Love in the Time of Serial Killers. Next, I have The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. And I know she just came out with the second book, or like in the series, but it might follow different people. I'm not totally sure. But this is about a witch who curses her boyfriend and then meets someone new, I assume. But yeah, I don't really know a ton about it except that it's a romance about a witch. So that is The Ex-Hex. Don't have too much else to say. We'll see if I get to it. Okay, next up are definitely, I don't know where to put these. They were in a random stack, but these are all ones I've read. There's others mixed in these next couple of stacks that I have read as well. But for some reason this stack didn't get into one, so I'm just gonna do it as a stack I've read. First up is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. I loved this book. I either gave it a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5. But it was so good, so creepy, so eerie. The world, sort of world building, because it's set in the real world, but there's also sort of this other world. I don't want to give too much away. I thought it was so like sort of grotesque but interesting. I loved the sisters and sort of their bond as well. It was just so good and it sits with me. I like sometimes just like think about it randomly. I thought it was a really good book. So I recommend it like a lot. The mystery in it was interesting. I think maybe could be easy to guess. I think I sort of had an idea of what happened, but obviously wasn't totally sure. But I thought it was good nonetheless, even if I sort of guessed what had happened. So And I don't want to give too much away. You should just go into it not knowing too much, except that these sisters disappeared and then came back, I think, a month later. And now, as they've grown, one of the sisters goes missing, leaving behind some weird clues. So I think that's all you should know. It's really good. Like I said, I think about it just randomly all the time. Honestly, could be a reread, but I have lots of other books to get to, so holding off on the rereads, except thanks. Next up, I have The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Yes, I know everyone talks about this freaking book, and to be honest, it sort of put me in a reading slump, so I wasn't as in love with it as other people, but I gave it a 4 out of 5 because I could recognize how good the writing was, how fleshed out the characters were, and just how fucking terrible they are as well. But it's about a group of students who are learning under this, I believe, Greek, or he's like a classics professor, and they sort of get caught up in a web. I don't know what to say. Like, I'm sure you know this book, have heard of it, read it. Yeah, I don't want to say too much about it, but I thought it was a good atmospheric book, as far as like the setting, where they were, you know, of course they're in New England area, so it does go through the seasons. Like I said, I recognize the good writing. I think it was just in a time in my life that I wasn't totally prepared to read all of this, and how like dense and honestly intense this is. But it's a good book, and I do recommend it, just like everyone else. Definitely sort of a modern classic. Next up, I have A Dowry of Blood. This book, I read it on my Kindle, and I read it so fast. I had to buy the the physical copy. But this is a book about Dracula's brides. It's sort of a lyrical, dreamy reimagining of them. It's a story about desire, obsession, and emancipation. I will say trigger warning for this book for domestic abuse, so be warned about that. Check other trigger warnings. I'm not sure if there are any, but the main one is definitely domestic abuse. Let me just read you the dedication, and if that doesn't get you to read the book, I don't know what will. This says, "To those who escaped a love like death, and to those still caught in its grasp, you are the heroes of this story." This book was so good, and it's sort of like letters to Dracula. So I really liked how it was told and sort of the format of it. Like, some pages are as short as that. So it was a quick read. Honestly, could be another reread. I loved this book. The premise around it, so good. Definitely recommend it if you can tolerate the sort of domestic abuse aspect. I think it does it as much as someone can in a well thought out way, and considering sort of the victims of domestic abuse. So really loved it. Very well written. So highly recommend. Next up, I have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I loved this book. This and a few others got me back into reading during the pandemic. So this was one I picked up and loved. This is about a girl who is an unlikely member of Yale's freshman class, raised in LA by a hippie mom. She was dropped out of school early into a world of shady drug dealer boyfriends, dead-end jobs, and much, much worse. She was the sole survivor of a horrific unsolved multiple homicide, and some might say she's thrown her life away, but she gets offered a second chance. The other thing is, so she starts dealing with the secret Yale societies, which I loved so much, and I want to reread it so bad. Maybe I'll listen to the audiobook or something, but I miss this, and I can't wait for the second book. so excited. I loved Alex and sort of her background and how she sort of fit or didn't fit into Yale's atmosphere, but was trying, and I loved the ideas of the secret societies and how, you know, they deal with dark magic and they're very super privileged and have this power. I loved it. So definitely like dark academia book. I just like, I could go on forever. Loved it. I thought it was better than Shadow and Bone. I read this first before Shadow and Bone. Loved the premise around the book a lot more than Shadow and Bone, though it was good. This is definitely more my kind of book, so I loved it. Please read it. Okay, next up, I did single out some thrillers. Like I said, I didn't do very well at separating them by genre or like what maybe age range they're in as well. But next are at least 2 thrillers. Like I said, there might be more, but these 2 for sure. First is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I think we all know this one. I really don't need to say much. I've watched the movie. I started reading the book and then I stopped for now. Not a DNF for sure, just on hold until I'm definitely in the mood. I'm a big mood reader, so I can't just like pick up any book. It's definitely something I need to be in the mood for. So it's on hold for now, but I do recommend it if you want a good sort of feminist thriller. I think a little bit of feminist topics. Next up I have Out by Natsuo Kirino. I think I've heard this one kind of drags on, but I'm still intrigued to get to it. I know this young mom ends up killing her husband and then confesses the crime to one of her closest colleagues, and they all, I think, kind of help her dispose of the body. It says, Out is a psychologically taut and unflinching foray into the darkest recesses of the human soul, an unsettling reminder that the desperate desire for freedom can make the most ordinary person do the unimaginable. So I know her husband, I think, is like abusive and gambles. That is Out. Love this cover, so creepy and cool. So those are the 2 thrillers for sure. Okay, next let's do the nonfiction that I have. First I have Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism. I wouldn't say this is like a spooky book, but it is kind of about cults and the language they use. I shouldn't say it's kind of, it is about cults and the language they use to gain followers, to sort of entrap people into their group and cult. So I thought it was so good. Amanda Montell did really, really well in her research, in telling the story. I like was listening to an audiobook sort of at the same time that I read it, or like on the way to work I would I would listen to the audiobook. Okay, Cultish. My camera overheated a bit, so giving it a break, and I may have to give it another one. Cultish, yeah, I just recommend it if you want more of a nonfiction. This is about cults and the language they use to gain followers. Really good book. Next, I have A Season with the Witch. This is about the magic and mayhem of Halloween in Salem, Massachusetts. I think I saw this on TikTok like last year sometime. But it's just about sort of the Salem witch trials and how that has changed the city and the reputation in America. So there's a lot of interviews, and from exchanges he creates a picture of this unique place and the people who revel in or merely weather its witchiness. So definitely a place I would love to visit, and this is on my list, I think, for like, you know, witch in the title / a nonfiction. I think technically it's supposed to be a helpful nonfiction, but this is a nonfiction technically. So yeah, that is this one if you wanted a more nonfiction about Salem. Okay, next up I have, this is Lake's Edge by Lyndall Clipstone. I know the second book came out recently, but this one is a girl trying to protect her younger brother who possesses forbidden black magic that spills from his fingers as shadows. I know there's supposed to be some romance in this as well, about curses. Yeah, I don't really know too much except that it sounds spooky, like unraveling of curses and love, I guess. Which honestly I didn't remember that there was a romance, but yeah, that is Lake's Edge. Definitely a spooky cover. Next I have A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. I've had this book for a while and have not read it for some reason, but this is definitely a sapphic romance about witches in this school. So kind of dark academia, witches, girl romance. Yeah, I think this girl gets intrigued by a previous event that happened with some girls that were witches or something, and so sort of unraveling another mystery and sort of the bonds of female love and friendship book. Next I have The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. This has also been on my TBR for a while, but this is about witches who have the power depending on the season they are born in. And Clara has power that's wild and volatile. So it goes through the season, so this could be read really at any time, but I think, you know, with sort of the witch vibes, I think autumn would be a good one. But yeah, this is on my list as well. I think also for Witch in the Title. I'm definitely more keen to get to this than the other one because this has been on my list for a while and I really need to read it because I've heard nothing but good things. Also, underneath the dust jacket, beautiful. But I really love the premise around, you know, your power is dependent on the season you were born in. So really love that. Next up is on my list for October, and this is The Haunting Season, Ghostly Tales for Long Winter Nights. So it says for winter nights, but since they're possibly like ghost stories, I figured this would also be good for autumn or October. One and the same, honestly. So autumn. This is on my list to read. Definitely just can't wait to see what happens. Hopefully it's a little bit weird and spooky. Next I have Slasher Girls and Monster Boys, which is a collection of stories. Classic Tales, Brand New Nightmares. So that's this one. I wish this was on my list because I do love like short story collections. I think they're easy to read and get through. I am interested to see how this goes. Last in this pile is Beast and Beauty, which are, I believe, is also another like short story collection by Soman Chania. I definitely said the last name wrong and I'm so sorry. So definitely cool, illustrated. Gosh, this book is so heavy. Illustrated book as well. I think it would be pretty quick, but looks like it has all the typical sort of, you know, stories. Literally Red Riding Hood, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Rapunzel, Jack and the Beanstalk, Hansel and Gretel, Beauty and the Beast, Bluebeard, Cinderella, The Little Mermaid, Rumpelstiltskin, and Peter Pan are the stories. So I sort of hope it's not just like the same stories. Beast and Beauty. So I read the first little bit because my camera overheated again, and it looks like it might be a little different retelling, so that's exciting. I might honestly pick this up soon because I think it would go pretty quickly. Okay, next I have Harrow Lake by Kate Ellis. This definitely sounds like a creepy book. I know she moves back to Harrow Lake. It says the more Lola discovers about the town, the more terrifying it becomes. So I think this would definitely be a spooky, creepy book for this year. Next, I have What We Devour by Lindsay Miller. This says sometimes you have to bite the hand that feeds you. This is about a girl who holds the power of the banished gods, the noble and the vile inside her. So then it says a bloodthirsty crown prince comes to arrest Julian's father, and he immediately recognizes Lorena for what she is. So she makes a deal for a fair trial of her betrothed's father in exchange for her service to the crown. The prince is desperate for her help. He's spent years trying to repair the weakening door that holds back the vial, and he's losing the battle. It says, as Lorena learns more about the door and the horrifying price it takes to keep it closed, she'll have to embrace both parts of herself to survive. Definitely think would be an exciting book, so I need to get to this soon. That is What We Devour. Next, I have Woman Eating. Now this is a vampire book about a young girl who moves away from her mother and is sort of trying to make it on her own as a vampire in London. She wants to try all the human food. She wants to experience human things. She binge watches Buffy the Vampire Slayer and videos of people eating food on YouTube and Instagram. So, as Lydia develops as a woman and an artist, she will learn that she must reconcile the conflicts within her, between her demon and human sides, her mixed ethnic heritage, and her relationship with food and in turn humans. So that's this one. I've heard amazing things about this, and it's a short little book, so definitely excited to get to that. Also, look at this cover. Amazing. Next, I have Devil House. This was in my book haul, so don't want to say too much about it, except that it would probably be a good sort of thriller, maybe ghost story book for the season. So that's Devil House. I'm kind of trying to go quick so my camera doesn't overheat. Next I have The Hollow Places. I watched a video of someone who read this and they didn't particularly like it, so I'm a bit nervous, but I'd give it a shot. It sounds like it's a little more sci-fi than creepy, so we'll see. Or than horror, I should say, because sci-fi can still be creepy. Next up, this is a book that I have read. This is Bunny by Mona Awad. Such a good book. Loved the underlying themes. I read this with Chloe from Books with Chloe and Caitlin from Kate Literature. They always do a reread, and I think it was their October Patreon buddy read last year. So I read it on my Kindle and loved it. I loved the discussions because like so much happened that I couldn't really like think, or it was such a like fever dream that you couldn't think of the underlying theme. So it's definitely something to like reread for sure. But very good book. Highly recommend it. Definitely dark academia, sort of feminist themes running through as well. This is about a student. Her name's Samantha, and she is going through a like English degree at Warren University. Oh, excuse me. And a clique of unbearably yet sinister rich girls who call each other Bunny and seem to move and speak as one. But everything changes when Samantha receives an invitation to the bunny's fabled smut salon and finds herself inexplicably drawn to their front door, ditching her only friend Ava in the process. It's just amazing what Mona Awad did with this book. Please read it. Next, I have Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. I haven't read this yet, but I've heard really good things about it. One day, the mother was a mother, but then one night, she was quite suddenly something else. So I know it sort of deals with topics of motherhood and sort of the structures of power, contemporary womanhood. I think it will sort of be similar to Bunny in that it'll maybe be a little bit like a Fever Dream. At least that's what I've heard, so we'll see. But I think this would be a good sort of weird book to get to, but with like underlying themes that the author's trying to discuss. Okay, only two more. One of the last ones is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily Ann M. Danforth. This is a huge book, so I am scared to get to this, but also sort of dark academia, sapphic romance. I know there was like an accident at this school for girls, and I think it shut down, and now they're trying to film there or something. Yeah, it looks like a book was published. Okay, last clip. I was talking about this. Definitely dark academia, girl romance. It's just a big book, so I'm scared. But this will be a good one. I don't know if I love the wasp premise, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Plain Bad Heroines. Last on the list, finally, is House of Leaves, which is supposed to be the scariest, spookiest, weirdest, I don't know, book of all time or something, I don't know. But also very, very intimidating, weird formats in the book. So I don't know when I'll get to this, but I have it. And yeah, I think I sort of understand the premise a little bit. Yeah, otherwise I don't know much else and why it's so spooky, but that's last on my list. I had to include it because supposedly it's the creepiest, scariest, I don't know, whichever one of all time. So there's that one. And that's it for this list. I definitely could have had others, and there's probably others you would recommend. But yeah, that's it for this autumn season, spooky season list of books. I tried to have a good range, so hopefully I did, and hopefully you get some recommendations. Even though it's October 2nd, you probably already have some. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!